show, Kentucky Congressman James Comer, who is chairman of the House Oversight Committee. Chairman Comer, welcome back, sir, as always.
Great to be back.
All right, Mr. Chair, I want to ask you about Devon Archer. It's speculation that he will appear before your committee on Monday. My first question is, have you nailed down that date?
His lawyer issued a statement yesterday confirming that he will, in fact, come before our committee staff Monday for a transcribed interview. As has been reported, he was scheduled 3 or 4 other times and had to cancel for various reasons. But this is the first time that his lawyers publicly issued a statement confirming that he will, in fact, show up. So that's very good news for our investigation.
All right. Well, it's good news for the public and for transparency. Now, he was, once upon a time, Hunter Biden's, I guess, best pal, involved in all the same business ventures. So, Mr. Chairman, let me ask you this. There's a lot of speculation what Mr. Devon Archer may say, especially with respect to various conference calls with then Vice President Joe Biden. I wanted to ask, with respect to the speculation, where's that speculation coming from? Did you pre-interview Mr. Archer, or where's all these rumors stemming from?
Well, I can say this. Mr. Archer's had conversations with several people over the course of the past couple of years. So I think those were the sources in the New York Post interview. I'm pretty confident I know who those sources were. So Devon Archer would know more about particularly Burisma than anyone we could talk to, because Devon Archer was on the board of Burisma with Hunter Biden. So in addition to them being close friends, they were also on the board of that Ukrainian energy company that's at the center of everything in our investigation. Look, we released the form last week, Senator Grassley and I, that showed that there was an allegation made by the owner of Burisma that he bribed Joe Biden in exchange for firing the prosecutor who was investigating Burisma for corruption. We know that Joe Biden went on television and bragged about firing the prosecutor. We know there are suspicious wire transfers from Ukraine that we don't know what the purpose of those wire transfers were. And we know that Devon Archer knows a lot of answers that we seek with respect to those suspicious wire transfers. So we're very excited about his upcoming testimony before the House Oversight Committee.
Jim, just as an aside, but it's an important aside, you know, in that 1023 that was released by Senator Chuck Grassley, it comes out that it was Joe Biden who was shaking down the CEO of Burisma. There was coercion. Biden was the one who initiated, said, you got to pay me $5 million and my son $5 million. It wasn't the other way around. Actually, the Burisma guy didn't want to deal with Joe Biden. And in fact, the informative source, the secret source, advised him not to. But I thought it was quite interesting, and I wanted to get your take. I mean, it seems clear from that 1023 that Joe Biden was coercing the head of Burisma.
I don't think any rational person who's kept up with our investigation would believe that the president's son had the ability to nail down millions and millions of dollars in wire transfers from foreign nationals through shell companies that were then laundered to the various Biden family members. I think most rational people would suspect that Joe Biden was front and center in this scheme. And that's what our investigation's been about from day one. It's always been about Joe Biden. And I think we heard the IRS whistleblowers say in their testimony last week that their investigation was closing in on Joe Biden, and that's when the Department of Justice got nervous. That's when they told him to stand down. That's when they stopped sharing information with the whistleblowers, because they were scared that it was coming close to Joe Biden. And the most troubling thing we learned in that hearing last week was that 1023 form that Senator Grassley released, that when Attorney General Barr gave that to Weiss, the U.S. Attorney in Delaware, he never shared that with the IRS employees who were investigating the international tax schemes. Weiss knew these investigators were investigating suspicious wire transfers from Ukraine, and yet he never gave them that FBI document that alleged Joe Biden was involved in a bribery scheme. I mean, this is a cover-up to a big crime that hopefully we're going to be able to get more answers to next week when we start what I call the deposition phase of our interviews, where we start bringing people in and showing the bank records and bank statements that we've already subpoenaed and said, what was the purpose for this $1 million transfer from China? What was the purpose for this $1 million wire transfer from Ukraine? Hopefully these people will be able to give us answers to those.
Didn't that, those documents circulate, as I understand it, when Bill Barr was still running the Justice Department. The documents went through Pittsburgh. Now, I don't know if it was a U.S. attorney or the FBI office in Pittsburgh, but a lot of the documents that you're just discussing were corroborated by Pittsburgh, and then they went to Delaware, and then they all kind of dropped dead in Delaware.
Right.
Weiss wouldn't pursue it. Is that a fair assessment of the way this thing went?
That's a very fair assessment. It was the U.S. attorney in Pittsburgh, and he didn't have subpoena power. He didn't have the ability to investigate a lot of this. He didn't have the staff. He didn't have the authority. So he transferred it to the U.S. attorney in Delaware, who was leading the investigation of the Biden family. So, but what he looked into, he felt like, I believe his name was Brady, what he looked into was he felt like was very troubling. And again, there's a pattern here that would suggest that a bribe isn't out of the question, because of how else do you explain the millions of dollars that have been transferred into the Biden shell accounts from foreign nationals who were direct beneficiaries of U.S. policy when Joe Biden was vice president?
Well, the thing is, you're talking about bribe. I mean, according to the FBI's confidential source, a guy that they've used in the past, they've spent a couple, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of dollars on it.
Hundreds of thousands.
And I guess this guy, Jamie, I guess this guy himself is some kind of high-level business consultant, because he was working with Burisma at the top level and so forth and so on. He makes it clear that it was, I'll come back to this point because I think it's incredibly important, that Joe Biden was coercing the president and CEO of Burisma. It wasn't the other way around. It was Joe Biden. And so Joe Biden is running this family crime syndicate. Joe Biden's the guy that got rich as vice president. Most of us who come into government, for a few years or whatever, we lose money. We have to dip into our savings. Joe Biden became a multi-millionaire with fancy estates and so forth. So he's telling this Burisma guy, Joe Biden, to pay him $5 million and his son. I mean, isn't that, it's beyond bribery. It's bribery, but he is the one who initiated it. Isn't that treason? Isn't that impeachable offense?
Well, I think Kevin McCarthy said last night on Fox News on Hannity's show that we're going to begin an impeachment inquiry. I mean, the evidence that the House Oversight Committee has presented to the American people thus far is pretty overwhelming. I don't think anyone, as I said earlier, with a sense, any type of common sense, would think that the president's son was able to do all this. And I think we're going to have an opportunity to hear from someone next week who was front and center in all this, that has many answers to these questions, and he's going to be given an opportunity, and I hope that he'll be like the two IRS whistleblowers and step up and tell the truth and be heroes, because this is one of the biggest crimes that I've ever studied with respect to American history. This is troubling. Every American should strongly oppose public corruption, and that's what this investigation is all about, to determine whether or not we've had public corruption at the highest levels in our government.
Jamie, you got a sec? I can play the McCarthy tape. You got a sec on this? No,
yes,
we can
sir.
talk about
Absolutely.
it? All right, here's Kevin McCarthy last night on Hannity.
This is rising to the level of impeachment inquiry, which provides Congress the strongest power to get the rest of the knowledge and information needed. Because this president has also used something we have not seen since Richard Nixon, used the weaponization of government to benefit his family and deny Congress the ability to have the oversight. I believe we will follow this all the way to the end, and this is going to rise to an impeachment inquiry the way the Constitution tells us to do this.
All right, so there's the speaker saying, you're the one, you and Jim Jordan and so forth, you guys are doing the spade work that I think has given the speaker this conclusion that we're marching towards impeachment. I don't want you to press, you don't have to press too far in that. I just thought it was you couldn't be any clearer than what McCarthy just said. Let me just ask you one thing before we lose you, Ms. Chairman. Why do you think this Devin Archer is testifying? What's in it for him now? He's got his own problems. He's going to jail for a year. Some complicated bond deal with Native Americans or some such thing. Why is he going to testify, and I presume under oath, before your committee? What do you think?
Well, first of all, I subpoenaed him, so he doesn't have a whole lot of options. If people don't show up for a subpoena, we're going to hold them in contempt, and I don't think that looks good on your resume. But at the end of the day, I think that Archer wants to do the right thing. I think he wants to set the record straight, and he's going to have an opportunity to do that. And look how those two IRS whistleblowers have been received by the American people. They're heralded as heroes. They went, they risked their careers, they did the right thing, and I think every American owes the two IRS whistleblowers who testified last week a debt of gratitude.
And finally, you're going to get this dead in Delaware David Weiss, U.S. attorney, in front of your committee under oath?
I think he's going to be in front of at least the Judiciary Committee, but I'm going to be watching in and working closely with the Judiciary Committee because we have a lot of questions for Mr. Weiss.
Chairman Comer, thank you for your service. Thanks for helping our show out, as always, sir.
Thanks for having me.